Protect your wooden clarinet and get the most out of your reeds with Boveda two-way humidity control packs. Watch until the end of this video to learn more. Then head to bovedainc.com and use code Clarineat at checkout to save 10% on your next purchase of Boveda products. Welcome back to the Clarineat podcast. I'm your host, Sean Perrin, and this is the show for clarinetists. We're now streaming live from my home in Calgary, Alberta. I was just talking before we went on air here. There's still no snow somehow, and as you know, I'm up in Canada, so that's pretty remarkable. It's gotten to the point where my daughter has asked for snow for Christmas, which has never happened before, really, up here. I'm here today with the wonderful Taneea and Dawson Hull, and Taneea is the principal clarinetist of the Jackson Symphony in Memphis, Tennessee. And Dawson is a pianist, a composer, a collaborative pianist on an album that we're going to talk about today, performing with Taneea. And I'm just so excited to dive in not only to the musical lives of these great musicians, but also we get kind of a unique chance to talk about family life as well. So Taneea, you're homeschooling both of your children, all three of your children, but only two are in school, I would assume. The one little baby, I think, 11 months old right now, or
he's almost 11 months. Yeah,
almost 11 months. So, and I just am excited to talk about a little bit of the balance between all that. I can't imagine. I have two kids myself, but three must add another level to that, and to have one so young still. So anyway, let's dive into this pretty quick here. But before we get started, I do just want to say a quick thank you to our sponsor, Boveda, for making this show possible. If you've been watching for a while, you'll know that you'll see their ad at the beginning and the end of the podcast here. But also, I'm thinking in the new year of trying something new, and that is to be making the episodes kind of free for everyone to watch, because, there's thousands of people on YouTube and on the email list and things, and not all of them are subscribed. And I'm trying to make this work. But one of my ideas to make that work is to sort of have a chance to have people advertise like classifieds on the show. And this came to me a couple weeks ago because someone named Sam Sadigursky had written who many people will know because he plays in the Philip Glass Ensemble, and he wrote a new series of etude books, and he was like wanting to advertise them on the show. And I was like, well, I don't really have a way for you to do that because it's either an all or nothing sponsor type of deal that I've typically had. But I had this idea anyways to kind of do some classifieds things. So we're going to maybe look into that. But I like it because it might actually give the community a chance to kind of learn about some things which otherwise, like, where else would he advertise that sort of thing, right? Even this album project, like, I'd love it if people who are creating unique album projects could have a way to affordably advertise directly to the clarinet audience and say, hey, this is my new album. This is my master's recital. This is my, whatever, right? So for today, the ad will be me. I just started a website recently, and it is in support of a music project that I am working on to start with. But the broader goal is actually to support other people's startup music projects, their first music project. And the inspiration was kind of that it's hard to get a grant, and these things are expensive. I'm sure you guys are aware, and I'd like to talk about. But working with a studio can be incredibly expensive. Renting gear, photography, all this stuff, right? So anyway, the website's called teesfortunes.com, and it comes from the idea of another company called 10 Tree, which they were, every time you bought a shirt, they would plant 10 trees. Now I was like, well, what if you buy a shirt and 10% goes towards music? So anyway, this is the shirt, the first one. So nice. This shirt makes music, and you can pick them up at teesfortunes.com, and I set up a Clarineat discount code. You can check that out. And if you don't want to make it public that you want your shirt to make music, you can actually wear them as an undershirt too. They work really, really well for that. So you can hide your music passion and wear it with anything. So anyway, check that out at teesfortunes.com. And if you are interested in kind of getting a little advertisement in at the front end of the podcast like this, I just love it as a way to help spread what's new and neat in the clarinet world. So anyway, back to the show. So thank you guys so much for coming on today. The timing of this is great. I love that we're kind of into the holidays, and these are all sort of not Christmas-based, but carol-based, Christian-based music on this album. So let's just start off. We will touch on your orchestral career in a minute, but let's hear a little bit about this interesting album project, Reflections.
Yeah, so we have been so excited to do this, and I've been bugging Dawson for us to go ahead and do it for like years.
Do you mean coming on the Clarineat podcast or recording the album?
Yeah, well,
there we go.
Check, right? But yeah, we didn't have enough music for a while, but then COVID hit and we were home a lot, and Dawson decided to just write. And he wrote several more of these arrangements, and then all of a sudden we had enough for an album, and so we went for it. He's the mastermind behind it. He's the composer, and I just play what he puts in front of me. So I don't know, do you want to tell him how you did it?
Growing up in church music, I've been in church music my whole life, but I've also been primarily as a musician, a classical musician. Both of us are classical musicians, I guess first, but in our training and our experience. And I have kind of just noticed, both of us have noticed that there's a lot of great church music out there, but a lot of it, has to be published for a wide audience. And so when a classical musician wants to play an arrangement of a hymn, it's probably not going to use a lot of their classical training, and so it's going to be musically, pretty streamlined. And this is not against any of those arrangers, because I know they want to write for, again, a wide audience, but I kind of just write for us. I write for Taneea as a classical clarinetist, and so both technically these are more geared toward the classical musician, both for the clarinetist and the pianist, but then also they're treated more of like a classical composition in their form and in their depth. So they're longer. They go. There's more musical development and things like that. Just more use of things like canon and fugue and sort of the classical composition techniques. And so what the end result is, I think there's 10 songs on the album, but I mean one of them is a theme and variations. One of them is about 8. Some of them are 8-9 minutes long, but they're just kind of like what would happen when a classical musician what would happen when they play church music, when they play hymns that they have very beautiful melodies, but just kind of taking those two worlds together, classical music and sacred music, and putting them together to where both are fully present.
And that's kind of what we love to do, is mesh the two together. We're believers, we're Christians. We love to take our music and put our beliefs through our music, and use our music to share our faith with people and share those hymns. And the music itself is, for me as a clarinetist, is really enjoyable to play. It's a good challenge, especially some of them on there. Some of them on the album are quite challenging, but that's always fun for me. And they're just they're satisfying. They're really satisfying to play. He writes really well for us, and we'd love for other people to get to play these too eventually, which we're working on sheet music and stuff like that. So
that was one of my questions. I was going to ask if there's a way for other people to, because you were talking about kind of sharing this with people, and you were also talking about how enjoyable it is to play. And it's funny you mentioned that, because as I was listening, I actually was thinking that I wish that I could find the arrangements of this to play as well, because even recently, like, my wife and I were looking for some Christmas pieces to maybe play, and I looked at some of them, and they're all kind of aimed at young kids, and they're all, the melody is fairly simple. The piano part's never really that interesting. But here there was moments where it almost sounded like Brahms or something, like you really had the piano take over. And then other moments really sounded like Philip Glass, like The Amazing Grace. I love that intro. That's for me, I love that stuff. But then other moments sounded like Bach. I'm like, wow, there's so much inspiration in here. And also the clarinet part was quite melismatic at times, and really interesting. And the phrasing, you're right, the exposition, I was like, wow, this is really musically deep and interesting, and not in a way that ever breaks the truth behind the pieces, if that makes sense.
Right.
Like, it's not like one of them was it's not like a Schoenbergian one on there, like from what I could tell anyways. I would have turned it off at that point. But,
yeah,
but no, I really loved it. It was, I don't want to say it's easy listening, but it was enjoyable listening.
Yeah, thanks. So
sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, because you mentioned like the name of the album, Reflections, it kind of has two meanings, and you kind of touched on one of them. That one of them is that, it's kind of they're a new spin, a classical spin on these really old traditional hymns, and so we want to reflect something new, but we will always want to reflect back to that truth and tradition that are spoken in those hymns, but bring something new to the table through the classical spin on it, and just taking it deeper. And we like to tell people that God created music, and that's his language, and so as musicians we get to recreate it and reflect back to him as creator. So it kind of, those are the two meanings, kind of where we got the name Reflections, and kind of our aim with the album. So
The album cover too, I meant to ask about this. Like this is very interesting photography and kind of concept. And did you guys like work with a photographer as part of planning the album cover, or?
yes, we found an amazing photographer here in the Memphis area. His name's Harris Beecham. He just worked with us shortly after we recorded the music, and he came up with these amazing photos and helped us put them all together with the the CD insert. There's more on the inside too. It's not just the cover. If you get the actual hard copy CD, it's really beautiful. Actually, I have it here. I don't know if you can see that, but
Oh yeah.
great pictures on the outside, back and front, and then there's more on the inside too, which he just did a fantastic job. So
It was neat working with him because he's a musician as well, not necessarily by trade, but he's composed some, and so we it really felt like a partnership both between him, and we can talk about maybe our recording engineer, but working with Harris, our photographer and graphic designer. We knew that we wanted the name Reflections at this point, or I think maybe did we that kind of came.
Yeah, he kind of helped us get there actually to the name. He was kind of throwing out some ideas and helped us like get there eventually. So
and it was just kind of like, hey, let's, in the same way that I composed the music and that we played it, that was our creative contribution to this. And you were like, what if we did this? Kind of gave him a concept, and it was just so neat for him to see him compose the design of this. We really feel like it all came together.
I love that. I do want to hear more about the engineer actually, but because I'm also, I've worked a bit with that kind of thing before too, but I just want to kind of harken back a little bit to what you said about the time that you suddenly had to do this project. And I remember during COVID at the beginning, like everyone thought at the start, like, oh, 2 more weeks. And that went on for, arguably it's still going on. But I mean, I remember one of the things, I was sort of sitting there one day, and I was not in a great place for half of that time at least. So lonely, so dark. It was so cold in Canada. But I started thinking to myself, like, I wonder what music's going to come out of this. Because like this period of isolation, it in the past, in history, that has always led to something, creatively speaking. And even like look at the Messiaen piece that was written somehow in a concentration camp. I mean, I was like, wow, that's so crazy. So I started thinking, during COVID, like, I wonder who out there is using this time to make music or write a book, or the art that we're going to see from this. And we're starting to see it now because, it's been a couple of years. And so little projects like yours have come to fruition, and even bigger acts too. And but I mean, even for me, I mean, I started playing my guitar again, and that's what got me started on my project, which I've now started recording and,
Nice.
Doing different things. So it's very interesting to me that kind of period of isolation sort of led to this. How did you guys get there, though? Because for me, when I first had that realization, I was like, well, surely none is coming from me because I'm I'm not in a place to be writing right now. So how did you get to the point where you were able to sort of see past what was going on and focus inward on your music again?
I think in March of 2020, I think I can't remember. It was maybe a week after, we were in official, just this was all affecting us all, and so maybe that March 20th, 21st, so somewhere around there. And where I work at our church, we hadn't quite shut down. They hadn't sent everyone home yet. It wasn't at that point, but we. So I was sitting in my office, which is kind of like a music studio. I compose there a lot, and but everything had been canceled by that point. All of the concerts, programs, services, everything. We knew there weren't going to be any large gatherings. So I sat there, and I'd always wondered if I had the gift of time. Because normally, all of us are very busy with concerts and rehearsals. We do one thing to the next, and I always think musicians are are busier than anyone else. I'm sure anyone would argue that for their profession, but so I'd always wondered if I had the gift of time, like a clear schedule, which is sad in a lot of ways, but what would I do? And I'd always said, what if I could. I'd always wanted to use that time to compose. That's something that I in the past gets the leftovers of my time, but because I always want to do it, I always want to do it a lot more than I have time to do it. And so I just started writing, and that day I wrote one of the songs that's on our album, "'Tis So Sweet to Trust in Jesus." And I think over my 8-hour workday that day, I started it and finished it, and brought it home to Taneea, and I said, "Here's a new song." We hadn't started talking about an album at that point, although the years before this I'd written a few songs here and there, but so I wrote this, and we recorded it. I don't know, the next day or something, but in a very short.
He has a bad habit of composing things very quickly and then throwing them at me, and either like, "Hey, we're playing this in church tomorrow," or "Let's record it today."
She lets me throw music at her.
So I have to cram.
So we recorded it and put it on Facebook, and just in the hope that it would be comforting to some people. I thought this is a very sad and confusing time. I know a lot of people are hurting or scared or worried, and it just it didn't go viral in like a Taylor Swift type of definition, but for us it seemed to really who does it seemed to really make an impact, and just I posted it, and it was like around dinner time, and I just saw so many comments and of people to say thank you. This means so much, and so from that the next day or like I recorded, wrote another song, and so about a week later we put out a new one, and another week later. So I started doing about one of these arrangements a week from the.
So what all you wrote? "'Tis So Sweet,"
Mm-hmm.
"It Is Well with My Soul," "He Lives,"
Mm-hmm.
and "There's a Fountain"
Mm-hmm.
during COVID, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So we wrote four out of the 10, I think.
Just kind of in a, and then by the end of that time, then we saw, hey, we're really close to having enough content for an album, and over those several months. And so finally which had been a goal that we talked about, but just had never we'd worked on it so sporadically over the years.
It's really overwhelming to put together all the pieces of making an album. So we had the goal, but I think having those final few pieces to where we had a significant amount of tracks that we could put on an album was kind of the final push that got us to really go for it and figure out all the details. So
was there any kind of other, I'm trying to think of the right word for this, but other like kind of a bigger vision for the album? Like, were you trying to leave a legacy for your family, or I mean, it sounds like you're trying to influence a wider community in the public, but I mean, was there any particular moment where you kind of realized, like, I have to do this?
Well, I think, it's always been part of our mission as musicians, as believers, to find a way to just mesh that world together, because, like I said, music is created by God, and it's created for God to worship Him. And it's a language that so many people speak, but not many understand in that sense. And so, like, our music it's really, it's meant to, it has the deep classical undertones and, his composition style and all of that, but it's meant to lead people in worship. and lead people to know the Lord. And however that works through the music, them listening to it or them humming along with the hymn tunes, which a lot of people know. So I don't know, do you have...
Well, and a lot of the I was talking about the musical content of these, sort of like the compositional part, but then also the text for our songs. So this is instrumental music, so there's no lyrics being sung, or there's no text heard audibly. But if you do know the text, let's say Amazing Grace, you mentioned that one. There, that's the text of a lot of these hymns, like Amazing Grace, in the middle of there, it says, "Through many toils, dangers, and snares, I have already come." So just kind of touches on that, the trials and the storms, the dark places in our life. I actually wrote this. That one I wrote in 2018 at the when my grandmother had passed away. And her name was actually Grace, and so when she passed away, it came to me like an epiphany. I thought, I'm going to write an arrangement for her memorial service, and it's and sometimes when I have those types of moments, there are times when I just try to grind out a piece, and it just creative juices, as we call them, but it's just like I feel like I'm trying to wring water out of a dry rag or something like that. But in these other moments when it just comes, and I'll just write. I'll just sit down and write, and I feel bad for Taneea because there's kids running around all over the place. There's the dishes are piling up. And here I am just running back around the piano, sitting at the piano all day. And she's always so understanding, and she knows when I'm in the zone, I guess. But
and I think too, that's another part of our mission. God's blessed him with this ability, and he sometimes just like gives them all the music, and he just writes it all, and that's our responsibility to make sure that we make good use of the talent and the music that's being poured into him, so that we can share it with whoever wants to listen. So
it reminds me kind of when I decided to first record something. Like I was out. It's funny how things just happen sometimes. There's that old saying, like, you can never really tell if something's good or bad or whatever until the next thing comes along, and even then, is it good or bad now? Is it good or bad now? I don't know. Let's see. And so this gig that we were doing had been canceled. It was a teaching gig with this guy I know, and we just decided to go out. Everyone went to a bar and had some dinner and a beer or whatever after instead, basically, right? And we would have went home, but there was a snowstorm, so it was just the chances just made it so we all were just decided to go hang out, essentially, right? Which was kind of strange because none of us really knew each other that well. But we were just going around the table and finding out, what's everyone up to, and he was talking to me, and he's like, "Well, you're so busy. Like, I was teaching, I was playing, I was doing this, I was doing that. I was actually just conceiving the podcast probably at that time." But he's like, "What about legacy projects? Like, what are you doing as far as that?" And I was like, "Well, what do you mean? What are you talking about?" And he was like, "Well, like, have you applied for any grants to record albums? Are you arranging any pieces? Are you doing?" And I hadn't thought about that. It was about 8 years ago, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's an interesting idea. Like, I can do all this teaching and all this whatever, but like, what am I leaving behind, or what am I growing my career with when I'm not doing those things?" So that kind of planted the seed of doing an album for me. Was kind of sort of this idea of a legacy. And in a way, that's kind of where the podcast stemmed from too, and my latest project too. I mean, that one really comes from a need almost to get the music out of me. Like I don't know if that's kind of how you feel, Dawson, but like I have sort of this problem I was talking about with my playing coach a while ago. I was just like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but like sometimes I'm tired and I wish I could just switch it off, but I have these tunes bouncing around my head and I have to get them out. Like, and if I don't, it's like, sometimes I'm like, I wish I could just sell on my gear and just relax and just watch TV like other people, but like, it would drive me insane. Like, I need to get to my studio. I need to work on these songs. I don't know why. I don't know what's wrong with me, but there was this real need also for me. I listened to some podcasts, as I do, a while ago, and it was the guy on there said, look, if you don't get the pieces or the songs or whatever's in your head out before you die, they're lost forever.
Right.
So if they're in there, someone, trust me, will enjoy them someday, whether it's your child or your friend or someone you don't know, but like at least get them in a basic recording on your phone and get them on YouTube or wherever you can. But if you want to or you can, you should pursue them. If you have anything in your head, you should try and get it out. And I thought that was so interesting. And so I guess that was sort of my vision, is just like the idea of a legacy and giving something to my kids. And even if some of the songs are darker in character, I'm sure they'll appreciate them someday. I don't know. But anyway.
Yeah, I think the as musicians, most of us are in we're musicians because we have a talent, right? We've been given a natural ability to learn and to play music, or to critique music, or to interact with music in some way. And that talent is a gift, and that's now not everybody's gifted musically. I mean, there's some people, you see them, they want to, they try, but it doesn't come as naturally as it does for others. But they're probably gifted in another way. And so we see, as Christians, we see all of the gifts as all of our talents as a gift from God, and along with that gift is a responsibility to share it. And so, I mean, I think
and to work on it,
yeah,
and to hone
to
it,
develop it, right?
Do it well. Do everything you do well.
I appreciate that. Actually, it's interesting. It's an interesting perspective for me, because I'm not especially religious, but technically I'm actually Orthodox, because my wife is Orthodox. We were married in an Orthodox church and all that, and we do celebrate Christmas and all those things. But I never really considered a lot of these elements and how they sort of do influence art. And I did hear a composer recently talking about how what got him through a big hump in his kind of career was to stop considering that he was working on these things for himself or for others or the judgment of others or whatever, and just start seeing all his work as a gift to God or a higher power or whatever. And that's sort of changed how I looked at my music too, because some of the songs come out and I'm like, I don't know why this is here. Like, I don't really know who wrote this. I'm not sure what these lyrics mean. And I'm not really sure why it sounds like, and people were asking like, oh, that song kind of has a weird vibe to it, or strange instrumentation, or it's an interesting form. Like, why'd you choose that melody, or what's the name mean? I don't know. I've just gotten to a point where I'm like, I don't know. I don't really know. It's not really for me. It's kind of just of me. And there it is. I don't know. I have to learn to like it too, or not like it, or I have ideas and that I don't like sometimes. Does that make any sense? Is that sounding?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a verse in the Bible, Colossians 3:23, that says, do everything you do as if you're working for the Lord and not for men. And that's always been my favorite verse, because it's easy to apply to everything. You can apply it to everything that you do, and it gives you, a much, much higher and deeper sense of purpose in everything you do, and motivates you to do it well. So. And
you look at the, like composers like Johann Sebastian Bach. The famous anecdote about him is that on the top of all of his compositions, he wrote Soli Deo Gloria, which is Latin for "to the glory of God alone." And so Bach, as a Christian, saw that his music was not an end of itself. It was it was meant to glorify God, and that's what we. I don't write that on the top of all of my compositions, but that is our goal, is for our music to not be an end of itself. And it's the part of the back to the sharing thing. I mean, how sad would it be for someone to have been given the gift of music or composition or something like that, and just for it to end with themselves, for them not to share it with others? I mean, music is a language, and so a language is meant to communicate. And who are you going to communicate with if you don't share it with somebody? And so that's our one of our overarching goals, is just to share our music. And
not to say that hasn't been a challenge, though, because I mean, we've been wanting to do this. I've been telling Dawson since I met him, since we started dating. He would, we'd get done with our classes at the Peabody Conservatory and go hang out at his place, and he'd sit there and play these compositions for me that he wrote, and I'd be like, these are good, like, people need to hear these. And I mean, we've been married for 14 years. I've been telling him that for 14 years that, we need to share these. We need to get his music out there, because it's so good.
I had a fear, I think, of sharing the music that I'd written. I was a composition major in my undergrad, but I would write pieces for orchestra, pieces for chamber ensemble, and they would just live on my computer. I would listen to Sibelius play them back, and and it would kind of get you to hear the MIDI sounds or the some of the sampled sounds, and it was just like, I did have a couple people play my compositions for my composition recitals, but I wrote so much more music that just stayed on my computer, never even played by anyone besides my computer. And so that was one of the really cool things when I met Taneea while we were at Peabody is I began to, at least for my clarinet compositions, I began to hear my music played by real people. And it was like, I remember the first note that she played. I think I don't know what the first. It wasn't one of my compositions, but one of the first things that we performed together or just practiced together. Was it the Premier Rhapsody? Was it Debussy or something like that? But I remember the first note that I heard her play. I had heard clarinet before. And
now careful, we're talking to a bunch of clarinetists.
But and let's face it, not everyone's clarinet tone or sound is the same, right? There's it's a wide range of. So, but when I heard Taneea's the first note that she played, it was so beautiful. It was kind of like you look at some of these composers, Mozart and Brahms, that. It's like the more life they lived, the more they appreciated and wrote for the clarinet. And
the first piece you guys played, did you say was Premier Rhapsody, Debussy together?
I think so.
Maybe.
I know we played that early. Yeah, we played that early on.
Was it like Love at, what is it? I think it's a concert F is the first note on clarinet.
Yes, yeah. Right? Yeah. It just heard
Love
that
at first,
sound.
concert F. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that made me want to hear her play some of the pieces because I had written some pieces. There's one piece I'd written. It was this one might be better just to live on my computer, but it's a theme and variations for solo clarinet. It's not on Reflections. It's in fact it's just an original composition. And I wrote it. It's a student piece. You can hear it's there's parts about it that are okay, parts about it that are kind of awkward, but we played it together, and that just made me want to write more for her. And then as we dated and then later got married, I think I probably write, I'm a pianist. That's the only instrument I play. It's the only instrument I've ever studied besides organ. But I write for the clarinet all the time. And, I just clarinet and piano. It's just like my boss at Germantown Baptist Church where I work. He's a composer too, but he always kids me because I'll say, "Hey, I'm working on a new song," and he'll say, "Let me guess, is it for clarinet and piano?" I said, "Yep." That's my compositional rut.
So, I mean, how did you kind of get through that stage? I mean, because and for some people it lasts for years when they're not really feeling comfortable to share things, and sadly for some people it lasts their whole lifetime. And like for me, I just keep thinking back too. Like I had also kind of been, if I'm honest with myself, I've been noodling with stuff, same thing in my computer for like 10, 15 years. And some of the song ideas I'm now working on were written in 2006, And it's like, why did I sit on this for 20 years and do nothing with it almost, And it wasn't really until, in the pandemic, same thing. I'd started working on some of these and just recording little short ideas on my iPhone, and I'd actually showed one of them to my daughter, and I got in the car the next day and said, "Oh, hey, what do you want to listen to?" And she started singing the melody from one of those songs, and I was like, "No way! Like my song is stuck in your head." So for me, that was kind of the wake-up moment because I was like, I've been so nervous to share these things, but here it's stuck in someone's head. Like maybe it can get it stuck in other people's heads too, And it reminds me of an Elliott. You know who Elliott Smith is? He's a guitarist.
I'm not sure if
rock, so maybe not. Yeah. Anyways, he's really interesting alternative rock guy. But he had some interview, and the guy asked him about his songwriting because his songs are very baroque, very interesting, very very cool. Anyone should check him out. But really interesting song forms. Anyway, but how do you write? Like, how do you come up with these crazy songs? And he just said, well, I play what I like, and I figure there must be other people out there that like it too. And to me, that's so simplistic. It's such a simple way of looking at it, but that all these things really boil down to those simple concepts, you know? So what was that kind of moment for you where you kind of boiled it down? Like for me, it was, okay, wait, this could get stuck in people's heads.
Yeah.
Elliot wanted other people to like it, but what was your, like, it just focus back to kind of to God, or is it more of kind of a personal realization that allowed you to open up and get it out there?
I think part of it was just kind of facing my fears about, being judged by other people or by the musicians playing my music. But every time I shared every time we would read through some of my music, I just got so much encouragement. A big thing was at Peabody. I was composition and piano double major in my undergrad, but when all my other degrees were piano, but I continued to compose. But at Peabody, it was just like this musical garden. Where just so much music going around, whether it's music being performed or composed. And I remember watching people, if you needed an orchestra for your violin recital, if you wanted to do the Tchaikovsky violin concerto, and you needed an orchestra. Of course, what college student or any level of student can hire an orchestra? But it's like, hey, let me get some pizza for everybody, and then boom, there's an orchestra, and you can have you can play a full concerto with orchestra on your recital or for your conducting recital. And I saw that with composition students as well, and that's how they would get people to play their music. As whether you offered them compensation in the form of pizza or even just people doing each other favors, because you would play in their recitals or you would accompany them or collaborate with them, and it was just kind of we had such a network of friends that were willing and genuinely interested in playing making music with each other, and so it's like the more I did it, and kind of just put my music out there.
You kind of just have to jump in.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to do it, and
just got so much encouragement from people. Taneea was a big part for me. Just because she would say this.
I'll just keep annoying him about it.
It's kind of bugged me.
It.
Yeah.
Well, there's that line in that Coldplay song. I feel like a quote machine today. There's that line in that Coldplay song too. It says something like, "If you never try, you'll never know," and it's like, that's so true. That's just so true.
Yeah.
So. No, I love it. It's a great album. Everyone should check it out on Spotify. And I'm sure there's a better way to support it, though, from a musical perspective. Do you want to tell me what that might be? Is there a way we can order CDs, or is there a way that people can buy it directly, like Bandcamp or something?
Yeah, so there's links on both of our websites where you can go to purchase the actual hard copy CD, and that is definitely the best way to support our music. The streaming services and stuff are fantastic. Go listen to it, enjoy it. Those don't really support artists like us because you have to be a lot farther along to really make any money from doing those streaming services. But we really appreciate anyone who just wants to have a beautiful hard copy CD. I know CD players are kind of a thing of the past, but most cars still have them, so we have had a lot of people tell us that they like to listen in the car, or just listen at work while they're working, have it on in the background. But yeah, the best way to order a CD would just be to go to that link on one of our websites, right? And you can order it from there.
It's available digitally for purchase as well. iTunes. Amazon, any place where you can buy, and purchase and download music, so it's available there. But it's also we were talking about the sheet music earlier. In fact, just this week, I finally put all of my clarinet arrangements, all of the ones from Reflections, and then even some stuff I've written in the past couple of weeks for solo piano. Put it all on my website, which is dawsonhull.com, and I put a category on there of sheet music, and so basically everything is there, where you can purchase individual the sheet music, and you can purchase it there, and then I'll email the PDF there you can actually purchase all 10 songs from Reflections and save it some by in compared to buying them individually. So there's a sheet music part on my website as well, if you're interested in that.
I was going to say too, like, all you clarinetists out there, they make great like little recital filler pieces, because we're always looking for, like a little 5-minute thing or 10-minute thing or whatever. And so some of these pieces would be great recital pieces if you need something like that. So just an idea.
Well, I'd be interested too, because there's been instances before where I've been asked to play at a wedding or something, and you just go pull up some kind of bad arrangement of some piece. You're almost embarrassed to play it. Like I've played versions of Amazing Grace, I'm sure, where I was like, I hope nobody musical was here. Because like I really feel like a part of me just died. And it's true, because they're just the melody is so basic. You like, if you leave an octave, you're lucky. And it's like just really not that well thought out. I mean, who knows nowadays, maybe written by AI. But so yeah, just to have kind of cool arrangements that are also musically interesting but engaging and engaging for the pianist too. That's also really rare, where the pianist is like, "Ooh, I like this arrangement." If they say that, it's a huge compliment to the arranger or the composer, right? But just to touch on the whole Spotify thing, it's so crazy to me, because now the little bit of money revenue that albums like this get, or my original album, is being stripped away. I don't know if people know this, but Spotify is now not paying out any, I think it's song, I can't remember if it's album or song, with less than 1,000 plays, which consists of, I think it's 3/4 of Spotify's entire library. So it's just crazy. So we go from like, okay, I feel good about streaming stuff on Spotify to, I'm supporting them a little bit at least, right? Well, maybe not anymore. It's really, it's crazy. So I did the math when I started this Tees for Tunes thing, and one T-shirt, the portion that would go towards artists would be something like listening to 1,500 to 3,000 streams.
Wow.
And if it goes to a sweater, that'd be more like 10,000. And it's hard to support artists on that level. So, but yeah, and a CD, same thing. If you buy someone's CD for $20, you might as well have listened to their album 30,000 times on Spotify.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I saw someone pose it this way, and I thought it was kind of interesting. I don't subscribe to Spotify, but I do have Apple Music. We listen to Apple Music, and but someone said those are great for discovering music, which they are. Because there's not really CD stores or Best Buy or anything where you can go and see all these racks of CDs. Maybe there's some independent record stores, but it said use your streaming services for music discovery, and then if you find something that you like, go support that artist by purchasing their music and not just streaming it. And so I thought that was neat. So I need to do that myself, because it's easy just to go through and even for a long time I thought, well, I'm supporting these artists because I'm listening to them. But was it Weird Al? Recently they said I had 12 million or 80 million. Some they said which, and it said facetiously, it said which is enough to buy a sandwich. So thanks for the sandwich. And of course that's someone like Weird Al, who is big. But so your local, your independent artists, don't do that. They don't even get a pepperoni or something that. And we don't do this to make money.
I was gonna say, it just shows that musicians are different in a way, because you do it for other reasons. But it is nice to be supported, and I know there's lots of other ways to do that, and it's kind of a world that we're trying to figure out and navigate, like all the YouTube and the social media, and I don't know, just other ways to share and get our music out to a wider audience. So we're working on it. It's a little overwhelming, especially with how busy we are and families responsibilities, and so.
Well, and it's true too that that's what's tough about music. You're right, is that there's a very personal or spiritual or whatever other side to it that people are still compelled to do it whether they get paid or not. But the unfortunate thing is that then the public takes advantage of that, you know. And I really feel that that's. I wish that was something that kind of musicians could overcome and sort of more firmly stand up and be like, no, you should support this and be okay about it too. Like it's like I've got a guy I know who he's a local artist here, and I'm sure he would have given me tickets to his concert, but I decided to buy the tickets a little while ago because I was like, you know what, it's $30. I'm going to the concert. I say I support his music. Like I should buy a ticket. Before we move on from the album, then I want to have a couple questions about your kind of balance, work life, family balance. And then if anyone's in the audience has a question, you're welcome to type it in the chat, or you can actually come on video if you like. But we mentioned we'd talk about your relationship with the engineer. We kind of glossed over it, and I said I'd come back to it. So before we move on from that, let's. Was there a special story there, or someone you know, or? Yeah,
well, it was neat because when we first, we decided we want to make an album, and so okay, what next? So how do we go about this? And I did contact someone with like a label, a classical, sort of classically focused recording label, and he said, yeah, it'll be this, this much. Gave me kind of an estimate of cost, and then we were going to try to do this. Maybe the better way would be to apply for a grant or something like that. But we wanted to do this with our own personal funds and savings, and so that was going that route was kind of cost prohibitive, because even with the label you still put all of the costs, and then the label just kind of helps you put it out there. But then I was talking with another friend of mine that's in the music industry. He's a composer, very very widely known, especially in the church music industry. And he said, "Okay, let me hang on." We were just kind of describing our predicament. This was, I think, in April of 2021. He said, just a minute. Let me make a call. And he knows everybody. He's in the Nashville area, and so he calls this guy. His name is Daniel Bondachuk. He's actually from Brazil. He came to the Nashville area in 2008, right around the time of the recession, and as anyways, he's a composer. He's a recording engineer. He directs the music at his church. They do a lot of his own compositions, and so we contacted him, and he ended up doing all of our recording, and we loved working with him because he as a composer. At this point, I did send him the scores when he was mixing, but when we were just tracking, he didn't have the scores. But he would say, "Was something after a take?" He said, "Was something missing in this measure?" It wasn't like a wrong note or anything like that. It was just and sure enough, there was like a low octave or something like that. But he could hear that with the composer's ear.
Very good attention to detail, which helped us a lot, because this was our first. We've both recorded things, but this was our first big real recording project, and so he was just wonderful with details and helping us through the process, and
so it sounds like he was engineering,
great.
Engineering, producing, and mixing. Then is that kind of what his role ended up being?
It was, yes, and so he recorded. We recorded not in a studio, but in his church, which had just been renovated. And it was a great classical music space, very acoustically live. And one thing when for a pianist, not every studio has a great piano in it, and so they had a very nice Yamaha C7 Grand in their church, and so we recorded in there, and then he recorded it and he mixed it and really helped us as far as in the distribution. Gave us a lot of advice from having walked through all of that before, handling all the duplication and distribution process.
That's one thing for anyone looking into the kind of their first project. There's so many details, like those 3 roles I mentioned. It's great if you can find someone who can sort of do all of them, and especially if the project is smaller or chamber music or whatever, it's definitely possible. But that's where the costs really get out of hand. Like if you're looking into an engineer and a producer, and someone to mix, and maybe they have another staff member to manage mics, or I mean, I don't know. It depends where you go, but it can be thousands of dollars a day to record some projects, you know. It's absolutely crazy. So it's
pretty much a 4-person project between the 2 of us,
real simple.
And then Daniel as our recording engineer and Harris as our graphic designer and photographer. And
which, I mean, we maybe could have saved ourselves a little bit of headache with if we had someone to like help us with all the distribution and the, you know, all the other stuff once it's recorded and, you know, the photography's done, and like we did a lot of that ourselves. So it was a lot of figuring out how to do all of those pieces and stuff, which there's still a few things that we did not do correctly, and somehow we've got to figure out how to fix that. But, you know, you learn with each project, I guess, so we'll get it better on the next one.
kind of, I wanted to talk to you guys a bit about this sort of work-life balance, and I know you're homeschooling, and now you have a very young one in the house too, 11 months old, so can we just talk a little bit about that? I mean, how have you made it work? How have you stayed sane and still musical at the same time? Which all of those, by the way, are feats on their own.
Yes. Well, it's a constant challenge and conversation, and you know, it's a lot. It's a lot. We're both just so passionate about the music, and we want to play, and we want to perform, and we want to share our music. And so that's a high priority, but of course our family and homeschooling is also a very high priority, more so. And so that has to come first, and it does. But it makes life a little chaotic sometimes. We homeschool in the morning. I've got a 6th grader, a 3rd grader, and then we have an almost 11-month-old. So he's just kind of everywhere right now, and it makes it a little complicated to school in the morning. But we try to knock out our school, before lunch. The kids both play instruments. Our daughter plays piano, our son plays violin. And so we have practice time after lunch, and that's, when I put the baby down for an afternoon nap, we kind of just all disperse and go do our practicing. So I come in my room and I get my stuff done, and they go practice. So it's a lot of, managing time like that. Where can I, get everyone to do what they need to do and knock it all out at the same time, especially when the baby's napping, because that's when it's the easiest. And then, I also teach. I have a clarinet studio at our church. There's a music conservatory that Dawson is the director of, and so 3 evenings a week I go up there and I teach while he maintains the home and the kids. And so we do a lot of like flip-flopping, like, okay, I've got them during the day, he's got them in the evening. And then there's other times where I'm teaching, he's got a gig, and my daughter has ballet and my son has baseball, like 4 different things all at once. And so we have to call on some help. We don't have any family here near us in this area, so it's, sometimes we have to ask friends for help and stuff like that. So it's a lot. But I think we enjoy everything that we do so much that it just makes it worth it, I would say, overall. And the kids are great. I mean, they're big helpers with the little one. They're always willing to, help him so that I can cook or whatever I need to do. And I don't know. I kind of lost my train of thought. Do you have anything?
Well, and one thing that we've started to see over the past couple of years, especially as our older 2 children are growing in their musical skill, and we can see their musical journey starting to take foot. And no, we're not pressuring them to be, okay, you will grow up, you will be a career musician. they're both very talented, and we're just, it is, it's part of their education, so it's not really an option for them to take musical lessons, but they're both, both talented, and our son has been studying violin for 4 years now, and then our daughter has been playing piano for about 7 years. I'm her teacher, but we were talking about them practicing and some of their musical opportunities and endeavors, and sometimes we can almost like see down the road where we shift to supporting them in their roles. It's not that we take a back seat, which is kind of hard to think about, because I think in a lot of ways we still think of ourselves, we're still trying to make it, I guess, and we all are. You never arrive as a musician, but we're still pursuing our own musical careers. But I can see, this is not a bad thing, but I can see at times where where we'll need to prioritize our children and their, whether it's musical activities or other activities, where you start to set the stage for the next generation. And I've even said before, what if all of the gifts and training that we have it's not that that's not all wasted, but if it goes into, we funnel it into them, and we help with our musical training, that's what we help our children to that's like, maybe that's the purpose. And it's kind of like you're talking about leaving a legacy, where we're giving our music to where it's beyond ourselves. We're not the end goal of that. And so that's been kind of neat. At times it's scary to think of us taking a backseat to them, but
and we like to do things together too. Yeah, I mean, they're at the point now where they can play together, and they have their own things that they do, and like we're doing a family concert tonight for a private group, and we do a lot of those. We actually have one tonight. We have one on Saturday.
Three in the next week.
One next week that we do it all together, and it's really fun. We have all different combinations. I'm doing a Bach duet with my son on violin, and the two of them will do violin and piano, and then Dawson and I will play a thing together. We try to do lots of different combinations and just make it a fun musical experience, and help them grow musically. So it's fun to do things as a family for now. It might get harder. Cool. I don't know.
I've got to look into that more, because my wife and I were talking recently, we've never really played too much together. We have a little bit. For our wedding, we did make a little short compilation of some pieces, and just kind of shared that as the wedding gift to people, which was quite cool at the time, but I haven't really played much since. I wonder if it's because of the kids. But
it's hard. I mean, it's hard to prepare for that. Now, we've done it enough now over the years that we kind of have an idea of what we're doing and how we go about doing it, so it doesn't take a whole lot of time and effort beforehand to, we just kind of throw it together last minute. Everybody knows what they're doing, and we just go for it, and we just have fun. And but at first it was stressful trying to figure out, how do we do this? How do we all play together? Or how do we get all these different combinations? And what do we play? And how do we find music that you can play and you can play? But we've kind of gotten into a rhythm now, especially for Christmas time, where we have a set of things that we like to do. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on the show. I don't know how I do this, but right bang on an hour again for the interview, so perfect timing. And everyone listening, please do check out their music. You can do this on, like we said, Spotify or wherever else. I'll put a link in the YouTube description here below, though, where you can check out the album and websites, bios, things like that. But before we go, is there anything else you guys would like to add? Or
I don't think so. We really enjoyed talking with you. I think this is great, and just if we can be of any encouragement to your audience, and just be to continue sharing your music in whatever way. Don't let your fear hold you back, and see your music and your talent as a gift that's meant to be shared with others, and that's a gift from God, and so. But yeah, thank you. We really enjoyed being on today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having
Guys,
us.
thank you so much for coming on the program. The Clarineat podcast is brought to you in part by one of my favorite products ever, Boveda 2-Way Humidity Control Packs. I live in a super dry and cold climate in Canada, and so taking care of my instruments is a real challenge. However, it's effortless with Boveda. Every 3 months, I just replace the Boveda pack in my case, and I know my clarinets will be comfy and cozy inside. If you use cane reeds, there's also a mini version that fits inside most reed cases and keeps your reeds at their best, so they're ready to play when you are. Check out Boveda's offerings for clarinetists at bovedainc.com and use code Clarineat at checkout to save 10% on your next purchase. Click the link in the description below to learn more.